studio. And today, for our September Messy Yoga Mom, I wanted to discuss one of my personal favorites when it comes to yogic philosophy. So, one of the first things that we learn when we start um, going through yoga training is we really delve into the philosophy behind yoga. So that way we have a nice foundation on top of the asana or posture practice. And if you've ever studied yoga philosophy, there is the 8 limbs of yoga, one of which is called the Yamas and the Niyamas. And this particular aspect of yoga has to do with how to treat others and yourself. You know, what kind of restrictions or limitations or moral code should you have as a yoga instructor or a yoga participant? And out of all of the main yamas and niyamas that we learned about, the one that really stuck with me was the idea of ahimsa. So ahimsa is basically about reducing your harm footprint, making sure that you are not actively engaging in harmful acts, whether to other people or to yourself. And, I really saw it as being a companion philosophy to the Golden Rule or the Wiccan Rede, where you're, treat others like you would like to be treated and harm none, do what you will. That sort of moral code about making sure that you are not actively and consciously causing pain and suffering to either other people, but most importantly to yourself. So, you might be thinking, well, why are we talking about this in Messy Yoga Mom? Well, for one thing, it's the Yama that's very close to my heart. And so I try to practice it on a daily basis as part of my journey as a yoga student and as a yoga instructor. But as a mom, I also try really hard to be mindful of my harmful footprint and practice ahimsa with my family. And so that's really what I wanted to focus on tonight, was really discussing how we can apply ahimsa to our parenting and beyond that to our relationships in general. For me, I have struggled in my past with being bullied, teased, abused, to the point of extensive trauma with regards to my relationships with other people. And so it's really made me almost hyper aware or hyper sensitive to how other people treat others and themselves, and how I treat myself. And because of that, and because of the fact that I am neurodivergent, there tends to be a very clear-cut black and white line for myself. Now, over the last couple of years, I've really started leaning into Buddhism as a extended practice for my own spirituality as a pagan. And I really take to heart this idea that, that everything suffers and everyone suffers. And if everyone and everything suffers, then I have to be mindful of how I am interacting with myself others and with the world around me. This may seem a little bit rigid or even a little bit on the fanatical side, but I believe that if I set that ideal for myself, even if I fall short and accidentally cause harm or lash out when I'm angry or depressed or upset, at least I know I'm mitigating the vast majority of the harm that I could be causing moving through this world. This, most of the time I practice this in a wide variety of areas in my life. Of course, I practice it while in the yoga studio and making sure that I am cueing my students in a way that doesn't cause suffering or harm, working through shadow work in a supportive manner so that no one, even if they are experiencing triggers, that we can slowly work through it so that we're not promoting prolonged suffering in their experience from that moment of shadow work. But of all the places that I bring in and invite in this idea of ahimsa and non-harming, I try to bring it closest to home with my own family. For a very long time, that wasn't always the case, unfortunately. There's no excuses, but an explanation for some of the harm that my family experienced was due to my mental health while we were in Oklahoma, which was very, very severe depression, anxiety, and struggling with how to express those feelings in a constructive and non-harmful way. On top of that, my husband was also dealing with mental health struggles during those 10 years that we lived in Oklahoma, that as a man, he really didn't discuss all that much, which added to more struggles for us as a couple and as a family. And there are a lot of regrets that I have with the early years for my children. And a lot of it comes down to stress and not being mindful of how my emotions and my health was affecting other people. And once my husband and I left Oklahoma and moved back up here to Kansas City, that's when we both really started to gain support for our mental health from each other, from professionals, from our friends. And it was after we started to heal and really focus on our mental health that our family started to heal. Now, we do still struggle occasionally with the debate on how to discipline our children. But more often than not, we both try very hard to have a concerted effort to be mindful of our children's mental health as well as their physical and spiritual health when it comes to grounding them or working on behaviors that are not appropriate or are dangerous in some cases. And that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't gotten help, if my husband hadn't gotten support, and if I hadn't gone through my yoga training journey to become the teacher that I am today. So, some of the ways that I personally apply ahimsa to our family life is I try very hard to navigate discipline from positive discipline and positive parenting, really, deciding, is this consequence going to be more harmful than corrective? Is this an appropriate path for discipline against the behavior that we're dealing with? Is there, can we work on talking this out rather than immediately jumping to grounding or taking things away? And so it's really just about cultivating a mindful relationship with my children while still being a supportive parent and having that mindset of how can I reduce my harm and suffering footprint with my children so that they can grow and prosper and become the adults that they were meant to be, and to be happy, content, fully functioning adults, so that they don't feel like they're constantly struggling or feel like they are an imposter, which I've experienced acutely ever since leaving high school 20 years ago. And I see my use of ahimsa being a way to help incorporate some of the lessons that I learned the hard way through graduate school, trying to be on the job market, starting my own business, the trainings that I've gone to, the life experiences that I've experienced, the different traumas that I've experienced, and mental health and physical health struggles. But on top of that, just using ahimsa as a guidepost for my children when it comes to how they interact with themselves and others. And, this is just my perspective, and this is my take on that specific Yama in yogic philosophy. I would absolutely love to hear your take on it. How do you invite in that mindfulness around discipline and relationships with your children or family and friends or colleagues? Just that idea of mitigating the potential suffering that you can cause to the universe by being present and being aware of what your feelings, your thoughts, and your actions can lead to, focusing on the potential consequences, both positive and negative, with your life. So feel free. I would love to hear your thoughts. Drop them down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, sharing, maybe even subscribing, hitting up my Facebook page at Savannah Wren Studio, or even checking out my Patreon page. I upload there a lot more content that I don't really share on other social media platforms. And as always, I'm Chelsea with Savannah Wren Studios, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.